Hi friends, today I wanted to speak about one of the very hot topic, that is death of languages that is taking place throughout the world as well as in India. So you have to remember that language is the vehicle of thought. It's a means of communication. So it is not only a vehicle of thought, but you should also remember that language is also going to be the identity as well as the carrier, creator, and conductor of a community, society through process and spirit. So we cannot generalize it as just the vehicle of thought. It is much more than a vehicle of thought. So the death of languages. Before we go that, let us just find the number of languages and its status in India. So total languages that are spoken in the world is 7,000 languages are spoken in the world, and the most spoken language is Chinese, purely based on the number of people, total number of people speaking. Online content, 80% of it in the websites, internet is in English. India is the second highest number of languages spoken in the world. So the linguistic diversity is maximum in India. So the first nation which has maximum languages is Papua New Guinea, has 840 languages in the world. So India has 122 major languages and 1599 other languages are there. So 22 languages are given the official language status. So 30 languages are spoken by more than a million native speakers. 122 languages is spoken by more than 10,000 people speak 122 languages. And the census of 2011 from 1976, it does not include all those languages where the native speakers are less than 10,000. So India, if you remember, had earlier been home to thousands of languages. Over the years, the country has faced the death of many languages and irretrievable death of languages, and most of the languages did not even have a script. Loss of language is always a cultural loss for a country's heritage and the human history. When a language dies, a unique way of looking at the world also disappears. So, why do languages die? So, the causes for death of languages are process of cultural assimilation, so which leads to shift in language, abandonment of a native language in favor of a foreign lingua franca, imposition of one language over the other. So bottom to top language death. This is due to the change in language spoken at the home and environment. It leads to the death of language since it is beginning at the family level. So we call it as bottom to top language death. Top to bottom language death happens when a language change and policy is introduced by the government, and they remove the other languages from being utilized in the judiciary, in the legislative and other assemblies. So that is also the where the government's interference leads to the death of languages. So this we call it as top to bottom language death. It can also be, the death of language can also be due to migration, climate change, wars, human invasion, and geographical barriers. Population loss is due to the war, disease, or catastrophe. So that is one of the major reasons for the death of languages. Forced language shift. The dominant groups compel minorities into language shift by either making their language mandatory or by enslaving or by enforcing them on these natives to be subordinates. This has led to death of many languages in tribes as well as in many of the occupied lands. So always the invader would like to impose his language to kill the tradition and history of a land. Voluntary language shift happens in a population when the speakers believe that they would have better prospects and opportunities when speaking in a language other than their mother tongue. That leads to the death of language. So these are all the various causes for the death of languages. So India has lost 220 languages within 50 years. This is as per Hindu news report, and another 150 languages can disappear over the next 50 years. So this is a very alarming prospect that we can see. Most dying languages are from the indigenous tribal groups and a few from the nomadic people. So according to the 2000 UNESCO report, 2018, 42 languages are heading towards extinction and 197 languages are endangered in India. So unscripted languages are heading towards extinction. So there is a state like Odisha, a state rich in tribal culture and heritage. It faces a severe threat of language extinction. When a language dies, the knowledge system also dies and becomes extinct. The speaker starts migrating to different languages and regions. So how can we prevent this death of languages? So accepting the linguistic diversity in India is one of the ways of preventing the death of languages. And linguistic diversity reflects the country's rich cultural and social heritage. So linguistic diversity also contributes to development of art form, literature and music. Preserving and promoting the language diversity in India, reviving dead languages and existing endangered language should be priority of both the state and central government. Efforts towards preserving and recording rich languages or expressions of culture should be made by the respective governments of state as well as central governments. So scarcity of language teachers in India and language teaching quality should be improved to retain the languages. Development of large cadre of high quality language teachers and expand the translation and interpretation efforts to make high quality learning materials. So good pedagogical dictionaries of 1500 words and pedagogical discourse of grammar at the 6th and 7th standard would be very helpful for the students retaining the language skills. So and one of the good news among this language disaster is Microsoft Research India is creating tools to preserve fast disappearing languages. At least there would be a record of these languages even though the native speakers are not there. As an individual, what should we do? So we should have that pride in the mother tongue, and we should speak and see to it that our family also speaks the mother tongue. Whatever the other communication we have outside, finally the mother tongue's role is determined by the family members. So speaking in that language and not succumbing to the other languages. So we should not have an inferiority complex over our language and think that the other language is superior. So we should come out of that mindset and also learning the language. So the best way to learn language is listening, speaking, reading and writing these languages and sharing it to our kids, whichever states you have migrated to or wherever you are. That is one way of trying to ensure that the language tradition and the history of that particular language is retained. So there is a very good case study of loss of language. Bo, a language of Andaman Islands, which is 65,000 years old, became extinct when the only person speaking it died. So you can understand how the death of a 65,000-year-old language happened. See, the influence of one language on the other language is going to always exist, and language evolves. Evolution of language is not wrong, but the death of languages is one which is irreplaceable. So language is evolving. There is no purity of language. Every cultural aspect of it, the language has been influenced by one or the other languages, and it has progressed to the next level. We are not speaking the same language as that of our ancestors. So there is evolution of languages. With all this criterion, let us remember the linguistic diversity is the asset of India, and we have to preserve that unity in diversity. That appreciation should be there. And also, what we have to remember is the languages are going to determine our taste and also the culture. So there is a very much shocking report that every 2 weeks a language is lost somewhere in the world as the number of people who speak that language dwindles. So onslaught of social media, the lingo and weird grammar, they are also to be blamed. So we shouldn't be casual about a language. As one of the linguists says, to be casual about a language is to be casual about life and the very existence that we all have. So that is what we have to remember. And finally, I'll end up this video with a case study of how German language has been able to overcome the onslaught of modernization, globalization, and influence of other European languages. So any person who has to go and work in Germany or study in Germany, so the first criterion for them is they ask you to learn the German language. You should also be able to speak, read, and write the German language. And you have to do the course in the German language and write the examination in German language. So this is mandatory. Even all the English-speaking nations, how have they preserved their language? So there are various tests like test of English as a foreign language, IELTS, that you have to write as a migrant before you go into that country. And there you have to speak their languages. So they see to it that their language, they accept the migrants, but at the same time, the language is not lost and their language, tradition and culture is spread to other people. So this is a very important case study of how Germany is trying to protect its language and spread the rich tradition and culture of German language by making it mandatory for any person who enters into Germany to speak, learn and write in German language. This is pride. German language, they have a pride and self-respect for their language. It is not arrogance or imposition of their language. You want to obtain the benefits of that country, you have to respect their language and tradition. That is what is most of the European countries and America, Australia are all doing that to preserve their languages. So thank you. If you have liked this video, you can subscribe to my channel. Also, if you have any comments, you can leave it in the comment section. Thank you.